Good morning, you are watching Anewz. I'm Anewz, and let's see the top stories shaping our world. US President Donald Trump to leave G7 summit early due to Middle East situation. Israel and Iran attacks continue as Trump tells everyone to evacuate Iranian capital immediately. And the second China Central Asia summit kicks off today in Astana. World leaders have gathered in Canada for the annual G7 summit, with war in Ukraine and rising tensions in the Middle East dominating the agenda. From trade deals to calls for unity, the high-stakes talks come at a time of deep geopolitical divides.
7 world leaders gathered in the Canadian Rockies on Monday for the annual G7 summit, hosted this year in the resort town of Anewz. Leaders posed for the traditional group photo as Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney welcomed global leaders, saying that they have to change with the times to build a better place to live.
We might not agree on absolutely every issue, but where we will cooperate, we will make an enormous difference for our citizens and for the world, and bring the next era of prosperity, I hope, to the benefit of those we serve.
Meanwhile, on the sidelines, President Donald Trump and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer have signed a long-anticipated trade deal with new terms on auto tariffs and aerospace.
This now implements on car tariffs and aerospace, our really important agreement. And so this is a very good day for both of our countries, a real sign of strength. So thank you again, Donald. A really important day for both of us.
Great people, great people.
But Trump also stirred division, announcing he would not support the G7's draft statement on the Iran-Israel conflict, which calls for de-escalation and emphasizes Israel's right to self-defense.
I think Iran basically is at the negotiating table where they want to make a deal. And as soon as I leave here, we're going to be doing something.
Shortly after, the White House confirmed Trump would cut his trip short, returning to Washington, D.C. Monday night to deal with what he called important matters. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was hoping to meet Trump at the G7 to discuss further weapons. Speaking from Austria, he praised US military support for helping his country defend itself.
No one wants to imagine how to live and fight for lives without US help.
As the summit moves forward, G7 leaders are working to present a unified front on global conflicts and economic uncertainty, despite deepening divides.
US President Donald Trump is leaving the G7 summit in Canada, saying he needs to rush back to the White House to deal with the situation in the Middle East. It follows days of missile exchanges between Israel and Iran, with no sign of the conflict de-escalating. Mitch McCann reports from Canada, where the G7 is taking place.
The last time Canada hosted the G7 summit back in 2018, Donald Trump decided to leave early. Fast forward 7 years to 2025, where the summit is again being held in Canada. Donald Trump has done the same thing, although there are very different circumstances involved this time. The president says he has to get back to the White House to deal with the unfolding and escalating situation in the Middle East that we've seen in recent days between Iran and Israel. The president says it's very important to get back, and it's leading some to speculate what the United States knows or what might be going to happen in the coming hours. So we'll be keeping a close eye on Washington for that. But here at the G7, that situation really overshadowed most of the discussions today. Even on Monday morning, when leaders had arrived to talk to each other hours before, it was revealed that there is a joint declaration the leaders had signed or agreed to, apart from the United States, involving this situation. The document reportedly suggested things like Israel has the right to defend itself, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and that generally called for a de-escalation in tensions. But US officials said Donald Trump wasn't willing to sign that. Later in the day, the president expressed his frustration that Iran hadn't come to the negotiating table and managed to negotiate a deal to wind down its nuclear weapons program. That really frustrated the president. Later in the day again, he posted on Truth Social that everyone should evacuate Tehran, which is the Iranian capital where 10 million people live. So the situation is certainly escalating escalating, and the White House has decided, so much so, he needs to head back to Washington. And that will disappoint many other world leaders who had been hoping to meet with the president tomorrow. Tomorrow's agenda was really all about Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, had been personally invited by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to discuss issues involving a ceasefire or peace negotiations with Russia. Zelensky will not be able to meet Donald Trump now, as well as Zelensky is Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who wanted to discuss the AUKUS deal, which gives Australia nuclear submarines from the United Kingdom and United States. That deal, or that security alliance, has now been reviewed by the Pentagon, so Anthony Albanese won't be able to have that discussion. So there will be many leaders missing out on time with Donald Trump, but the president has decided he needs to get back immediately to Washington. Mitch McCann for Anewz, Calgary, Canada.
US President Donald Trump has issued a warning telling everyone to evacuate Tehran immediately as airstrikes continue between Israel and Iran for a fifth day. His message comes as explosions rock the Iranian capital and both sides escalate their rhetoric and military campaigns.
Strikes continue between Israel and Iran for a fifth straight day as US President Donald Trump warns civilians to flee the Iranian capital immediately. He made the announcement on social media, saying everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. He blames Iran for refusing to sign what he called the deal to stop uranium enrichment and insisted once again that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran says its nuclear program is only for peaceful purposes. His comments came just hours after explosions were heard across Tehran, including a strike that hit the headquarters of Iran's state broadcaster.
I don't know how many of my colleagues were martyred. They told us to evacuate the area, but everyone stayed. This is the result of their miscalculation.
Israel confirmed it targeted Iran's media command center. It follows Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's vow to end Tehran's nuclear ambitions. During an interview with ABC News, he said everyone did everything possible to reach an agreement.
We had the peace talks. We gave it a chance. We've, clenched our teeth. We did everything we could to enable President Trump to negotiate the desired result.
U.S. officials tell us that the president flatly rejected a plan, an opportunity that the Israelis had to take out the supreme leader. Do you understand his concern? My understanding is his concern is that this would escalate the conflict beyond where it is already.
It's not going to escalate the conflict. It's going to end the conflict.
Israel has received more missile barrages from Iran since Friday as the risk of escalation grows. In Israel, more than 3,000 people have been evacuated from border towns. At least 24 civilians have been confirmed dead since the escalation began last week. Iran has vowed a bigger, more intense retaliation. More than 220 Iranians have reportedly died in the last 5 days, most of them civilians. And as President Trump urges mass evacuations from Tehran, the region watches anxiously, wondering how far this conflict will go.
Russia says it's ready to mediate between Iran and Israel and has renewed its offer to store Iranian uranium on Russian soil. The proposal, first floated before the latest Israeli strikes, is aimed at easing nuclear tensions. Russia says the offer remains on the table but admits the situation has become seriously complicated with recent attacks. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the military strikes were escalating the entire crisis to beyond serious levels. He also pushed back on Israeli calls for regime change in Iran, saying the attacks were uniting Iranian society rather than weakening it. Fuel shortages, fear and frustration. That's the reality for many in Tehran as residents queue for hours at gas stations amid continued Israeli airstrikes.
In the Iranian capital, scenes of urgency and uncertainty. Cars and motorcycles stretch around the block as residents scramble to fill up before the next Israeli strike.
People are worried, and most of the petrol stations are crowded because people are planning to get out of the city.
Some are trying to stay calm, even if they are unsure of what lies ahead.
I don't believe residential areas were hit. I'm generally relaxed. I'm not sure what's exactly happening.
But the growing queues and fuel rations are making it harder for many to move.
People are certainly worried. It's not a good situation. Petrol stations are not providing the amount we need. A car needs 40 to 50 litres of fuel, but they're only selling 20 litres, and then you have to queue up again. And most people are planning to leave the city, or they have other engagements to attend. But everyone is stuck here, as you can see.
And for those thinking of sheltering in place, options are limited.
We don't have access to a shelter. There are no shelters in the whole city. I don't think there are any places people can go to in an emergency.
As missiles continue to fly over the weekend, Tehran is bracing for what may come next, with no clear end in sight.
European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen said Israel has a right to defend itself against Iran, but stressed that a diplomatic solution was the best option in the long term to address Iran's nuclear program. Speaking to reporters ahead of the G7 summit in Canada, von der Leyen said she had spoken with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the situation.
I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu today. I reiterated Europe's commitment to peace and stability in the Middle East. In this context, Israel has the right to defend itself. Iran is the principal source of regional instability, and we've always been very clear. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. We have voiced our strong concerns over Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. A diplomatic solution remains the best way in the long run to address concerns about Iran's nuclear program. And Europe remains committed to finding a lasting solution through a negotiated deal.
France has ordered the shutdown of 4 Israeli defense company stands at the Paris Air Show, citing the display of offensive weapons.
France has shut down the 4 main Israeli company stands at the Paris Air Show for apparently displaying bombs and other offensive weapons in a move condemned by Israel that highlights the growing tensions between the traditional allies. The stands were being used by Elbit Systems, Rafael, EAI and U-Vision.
Beyond these walls is the display that was shut down by the French government. Half an hour ago, one of our employees wrote on these walls that behind them there are the best air defense systems in the world, used by many countries, and also in our war against Iran nowadays. She was consequently removed from the show by the French government, and what she wrote was covered on this wall. What she wrote was covered by the French government. I guess this is a fine display of democracy by the French.
Smaller Israeli stands without hardware and the Israeli Ministry of Defense pavilion remain open. Israel's Defense Ministry denounced the move as outrageous and unprecedented, accusing France of political and commercial bias aimed at disadvantaging Israeli firms. The overnight erection of black walls around the Israeli pavilions has been viewed as symbolic segregation. Executives from IAI and Elbit liken the act to historical discrimination. IAI's CEO, Boaz Levy, referenced the dark days when Jews were segmented from European society, while Elbit's Mashar Sasson suggested the move aimed to suppress competition. If you cannot beat them in technology, just hide them. This dispute comes amid a broader cooling in French-Israeli relations. French President Macron has grown more critical of Prime Minister Netanyahu over Israeli operations in Gaza and strikes against Iran. The Paris Air Show organisers stated they are mediating to resolve the standoff.
NATO troops are conducting a large drill in Hungary with tens of thousands of soldiers from more than 30 nations. The exercise comes ahead of a NATO summit next week, where countries will be looking at increasing their defense spending budget.
More than 10,000 NATO troops from 6 countries are taking part in military exercises in Hungary. The large-scale drill called Sabre Guardian 25 is happening near Budapest and is part of a wider US-led operation called Defender 25. It's to strengthen NATO's rapid response capability across Europe.
Really just to get that interoperability piece. You've got 32 countries in NATO. We have to learn how to fight together. And so having 6 all come here to Hungary and be part of this event, I think was pretty special.
These live-fire exercises with US, Spanish and Hungarian troops simulate how to work together if Russia were to attack NATO's eastern front. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is urging NATO members to pay more towards the defense spending budget. They are calls for an increase to 5% of GDP. However, some countries are not enthusiastic about the rise. A decision will be endorsed at the summit next week at The Hague.
In Astana, Kazakhstan, Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit for the second China-Central Asia Summit was marked by key meetings and a cultural event celebrating ties between China and Central Asian nations. Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Kazakhstan for the second China-Central Asia Summit has underscored deepening ties between China and the region. Beyond high-level talks, the visit was marked by a vibrant cultural event in Astana, where over 150 guests from political, business, media and educational circles gathered to celebrate growing people-to-people connections. At the Presidential Center in Astana, participants witnessed performances symbolizing friendship, including a touching rendition of songs in both Kazakh and Chinese. The event, co-hosted by China Media Group and Kazakhstan's presidential TV and radio complex, also saw the announcement of a proposed China-Central Asia Media Cooperation Alliance, aimed at fostering shared understanding and strengthening ties in arts, education and the media. Earlier, President Xi and his Kazakh counterpart Kassym-Jomart Tokayev held talks focused on enhancing cooperation in connectivity, green development, high-tech industries and security. The two sides reaffirmed support for each other's core interests, with Tokayev highlighting that Kazakhstan-China relations are entering what he described as a new golden age. The visit comes as part of the China-Central Asia Summit, which takes place today in Astana. The summit is expected to conclude with the signing of the Astana Declaration and the Treaty on Eternal Friendship, Good Neighborliness and Cooperation. A total of 58 agreements valued at $24 billion are also set to be signed. Azerbaijan continues to play a crucial role in evacuating foreign nationals from Iran as regional tensions escalate. At the Astana border crossing, authorities worked overnight to ensure the safe passage of evacuees. Overnight, groups from Russia, Vietnam and Tajikistan passed safely through the checkpoint, with diplomatic missions coordinating closely. Azerbaijan has solidified its position as a key transit route, providing a safe corridor for those escaping uncertainty in Iran. Members of Russia's Tchaikovsky Grand Symphony Orchestra who were evacuated from Iran to Azerbaijan held a special concert at the Baku Philharmonic. Following the crossing of the border yesterday, they announced the event as a symbol of gratitude.
The Azerbaijan State Academic Philharmonic Hall is hosting a concert by the Tchaikovsky Symphony Orchestra tonight. But behind the elegance of classical music, there is a story that touches on geopolitics. Just yesterday, the orchestra's full ensemble entered Azerbaijan, crossing the Iran-Azerbaijan border at a time when tensions between Iran and Israel are dangerously high. Regardless, the musicians are here, the instruments are tuned, and the show is about to begin, reminding us that even in times of conflict, music finds a way.
It was a notable evening at the Baku Philharmonic Hall, where classical music took centre stage. The Tchaikovsky Grand Symphony Orchestra delivered a carefully curated programme.
Many thanks to the Azerbaijani side. Thank you very much to everyone who was involved in our crossing of the borders and our subsequent flight to Moscow, and also to those who organised this concert, which we are now about to attend. So, we wish everyone good health, a wonderful mood, and we hope for more frequent meetings.
The atmosphere remained focused throughout, allowing the music to unfold in its full depth and detail, marking the night as a highlight in the city's cultural calendar.
The Iranian border is quite serious, but when we came to the side of Azerbaijan, we have, of course, been welcomed with tea, with candy, with love and care for us. So it was wonderful.
The evening offered a refined musical experience that highlighted the orchestra's technical expertise. It was a memorable night that celebrated the timeless beauty of classical compositions.
Armenia's economy minister said that companies are facing difficulties with both imports and exports to Iran and through its territory, adding that some Armenian shipments are stuck at the port of Bandar Abbas and within roads in Iran. He expressed hope for a swift restoration of peace. For a broader look at how the Iranian-Israeli conflict is perceived in the countries of the South Caucasus, we go to Tbilisi and our Nini Nikolashvili.
The new active phase of the Iran-Israeli conflict, now on its fourth day, is raising increasingly serious concern across the South Caucasus. Though Georgia does not share a direct border with Iran, the crisis is unfolding just beyond its reach, and its impact could be felt much closer at home. Armenia, the country that has long maintained close and intimate ties with Tehran, condemned what it described as a unilateral Israeli act, warning that this new reality casts fragile regional stability into doubt. Azerbaijan, the strategic partner of Israel, and more recently the country that has made a significant progress in normalizing relations with Iran, with the recent visit of President Pezeshkian to Baku contributing to this, has expressed concern and called for the dialogue. The foreign minister of Azerbaijan emphasized that the country would never allow its territories to be used for attacks against any third country, including Iran. Georgia, just like its neighbors in the region, has maintained cautious and neutrality. Its foreign ministry has expressed serious concern while carefully refraining from taking sides. This reflects Georgia's foreign policy, a delicate balancing act between Western alignment, regional sensitivities, and ongoing security concerns. Yet only days ago, Georgia has appeared to quietly align with the West when it voted in favor of IAEA resolution condemning Iran's lack of cooperation with the nuclear inspectors. Although it did not make headlines in Tbilisi, it is believed to reveal a broader orientation, the one that is not entirely neutral. For present, no clear alliance structure governs this conflict. The countries in the region seem to agree that any renewed instability in the Middle East poses a direct threat to the security of the South Caucasus. It's Nini Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, Anewz.
We are done for now, but don't go far. Stay tuned for more and have a wonderful morning.